Or y'all like to diss Mars? Y'all still listen to Bashir and Ali Muhammad with his fake temple degree. Reggie the doctor, no doctorate. Men admitting they got weave in their hair lock. Even if you were a stone, I wouldn't say you rock. What I say to you flock, stop listening to Seti. Backing up Farrakhan, but you didn't listen to Betty. Didn't listen to Aleem Bay, much less research. Don't think I respect blacks in more t-shirts. Stateless trolls, YouTube comment inventors. So conscious but checking off black on the census. Blaming your suffering on America, not you.s. Saying more sold you out when you sold yourself. Sold by your own Adanga kings on African thrones. No honor your ancestors, I see them slapping your domes. Clapping your crones at targets, never clapping the devil. Unconscious Moors calling themselves what the pot called a kettle.
I never sleep, the sleep is the cause of the devil. I never sleep, cause of the devil. I never sleep, the sleep is the cause of the devil.
There's no debate, Moors deflate egos of the world's most known disgraced people. Choosing to have no national name or profit. They claim he plagiarized the European, nigga stop it. Rami El Asself and Canaanland Moors prove that wrong. If you're still thinking the same, that's cracking your bong. Listening to Shaka is like listening to whack rappers or any of the HOK patriarchal actors. Frontin' conscious sucking straws, acting all fruity, making a killing off lectures, but won't support natural Tahuti. Claiming Khalid is their general, but won't follow orders. Taking advice from the cracker taught attorneys and lawyers. Keeping the people dumbed down, not thinking. Keep pushing lies on Moors, so our truth on sinking. It will for the few who know to keep it simple. Ron Artest even corrected his name to one of the prophet's principles.
I never sleep, the sleep is the cause of the devil. I never sleep, cause of the devil. I never sleep, the sleep is the cause of the devil.
Nothing more can be said, no pun intended. With no study, what we say won't be comprehended. Some of y'all love the lies from these conscious guys, calling you colors and shades, hiding their lying eyes, trying to make Moors look bad. We couldn't care less. Moors stay upright, aboriginal, independent, and fearless. We might bare necks, no need to bear arms or chest. Dr. Reggie has a Moorhead on his family crest. Polite nose, calling yourself black means you're dead. He said it and recorded it, so we won't forget it. Phil Valentine and Dr. Blair know they're Moors too. So in my Ms. voice I ask, what's wrong with you? Why you stay in the stateless and have no clue? Your name, nationality, and title brought back by Drew. Then you say, what's wrong with me? Like I have a problem. Putting conscious blacks head in the news, solving the Negro problem.
I never sleep, the sleep is the cause of the devil. I never sleep, cause of the devil. I never sleep, the sleep is the cause of the devil.
X-Clan, again, leather feathers, right? Telling you, you used to see these regular, right? Leather feathers, right? Leather feathers, X-Clan, right? R.I.P. Sugar Shop too. Moorish MC, avalanche flow. Watch for folders and rhyme chunks. All I see in dress code today is bite pumps. Pants off your ass, but you wearing a belt. But don't use it, take it off. Give you welts like dad used to do it. Black with no autopsy, no knowledge of self. Had me in stores, raiding clothes racks and store shelves. I'm from Tobago, never fell for Santa and elves. R.I.P. Gummer, and those murdered by sickle and cells. Big up the thunder, never charge me for one beat. And that's the M.O. of all producers that keep it unique. They know I don't keep truth discreet. Flow force abundant, lyrics won't deplete. Can't retreat now, I made it too far. While corny rappers still only write rhymes in 16 bars. I might as well too, since that's how execs brainwash subjects. Multi-dimensional MC underground like subdepths. Now the blown-up picture is Noriega putting up the 5 and the 2, just like the Moors put up the 5 and the 2. This CNN, Noriega, gangster rappers, thug drug money rappers. Go right now, go into the tape, the little tape thing with the drawer, pull out the tape, unravel the insert, and then read the credits. This is a big CD. This is a big underground CD. CNN Moorish MC, not a poet, not a rapper. On tracks, vocal gun, beretta, tongue clapper. Real as can be. I'm not a rapping actor like your favorite asking Ozzy more spit and drink a Sprite after. We'll teach you the law, and when he gets captured, he will get out like 3 strikes to back catchers. But you can't get out, being you awarded a crown. Man got straight denied you due process in Moorish gown and sashes. All laws divine, he man's his average. Power of thought got God's acting like a savage. Color of law got the savage playing God's position. Then savages pray to stars so ancestors won't listen. So colonizers dissing, pissing. Sorry, we just know that people are going to play a game, so we just want to get to this fast before they pull it down. We just want to get to this before they pull it down.
Now, this is another example of, this is another example of poor comprehension. In all respect to you, brother, I do understand the etymology of the word Moro. I understand that it goes back to the hieroglyphics. But what I am explaining to you is that when the European uses the term Moor, he is not referencing it in its original form. He's using it within the context of a description. That is it. Just like when a European or a white person calls you nigger, he is not calling you nagoose. He's not calling you a king. He's calling you something less than.
But nigger and negus are 2 different things. There's no relation there. And more can't be a description because it's a noun. If more is a noun, how is it a description? If more is a noun,
like, going on there.
Adjectives describe. I'm pretty sure adjectives describe in the English language. Since we're talking English or whatever, right? Adjectives describe, right? So when the European said more, he meant description. No, he didn't. Because more is always capitalized. Making up stuff.
He's making, exactly. He's saying that. No Europeans have ever came out and said that.
No European. He said that. And again, never showing where they're getting their stuff from. Just talking. Just talking. Carry on.
Don't take it out of context. You have to understand the word, how it's being used at that time. It's also like if we say she has a fat ass or she is bad. Based on the etymology of fat or bad, that's not a compliment. But within the context of the language we now speak, those are compliments.
No, it's not.
All right? But you could break.
No, it's not. A kid is still a baby goat. I don't care how many stores say kids section and people take their children in there. Kid still means baby goats. No matter what it is that you try to do, kid is going to mean baby goat all the time. Why would kid mean children? Because people start saying that now. What is he talking about? Making up stuff. Don't let these people make up stuff.
Making up stuff.
Oh yeah. Hold on. Thank you. Thank you, Mother Navi Poet. Fraudulent conveyance of language. Thank you. Let Mother tell you. Fraudulent conveyance of language.
Mm. Let the mother tell you. Let a mother tell you. Right? You need to comprehend some things there. You're one who needs to comprehend some things. We have our stuff locked. We study it, all that stuff. We know what's going on. We're not in the dark. Right? We're not, oh yeah, and let's just make sure we get our thumbs down on there to make it 6 thumbs down on this video.
Break the word down etymologically and say, oh no, they're not complimenting her. But when I say she has a fat ass or she is bad, I am complimenting her. Do you understand?
No, when you say she has a fat ass and she's bad, you're incompetent. That's what that means. You're incompetent.
That's connotative. That's connotative.
Why are you speaking in connotations?
Yeah.
Purposely. Because he already admitted that he knows that it really doesn't mean fat and bad and all that stuff. And then the other example is, how come you gotta talk about fat asses and stuff? You couldn't find something else to use as an example, conscious guy?
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing you could find to use as an example. Right? Forget whether it's fat or whether it's bad. The fact that you're talking about mother's ass puts you in violation.
You could have did anything.
You could have done anything. That's a bad car.
Yep. Like
That's
the teacher Todd said, do some bad shoes.
Do some bad shoes. Had to bring in her ass though. This is where these people's minds are at. That you're claiming about your liberation and all that BS. Gonna bring you back into who you are, calling you not Moors.
Understand? This is what I mean when I say poor comprehension. People are so quick to want to prove somebody wrong, they're taking terms out of context. When the European says more, he does not mean the etymological origin of the term.
Okay, so what about when Hindus say more? What about when Filipinos say moros? What do they mean? They mean description?
Right.
What about when the ancient Egyptians say more? They meant description? I don't know why we keep talking about Europeans like Europeans mean something. Like their perspective means something. Right? Us using Europeans as some example is giving them some credibility that we're using them as an example. Who cares what the European thinks or whatever? So now we're going to go. So the Europeans said that Negroes are monkeys and all that stuff. So we're going to start going with that. And we're going to start going that they were the founders of civilizations because they said that. So how come we're going with the European? How come you don't ask your elder that was sitting in the chair or whatever with you? How come you don't ask him? How come Moortown for the Indians is called Moortown? How come it's not called Indian Town or Lenape Town or whatever Cherokee Town or whatever? Why is it called Moortown? Why Moortown?
He's meaning it in a descriptive term. That's it. Comprehension is the key. So when we do the breakdown of this video,
Is it what?
He killed himself. Like you said it, you nailed it right on the head when you said it earlier. Well, if it's descriptive, wouldn't that be an adjective? More than out. More than out. Just like you said earlier. More than out. He keeps trying to stress it like it's a descriptive. More when European. No, they couldn't have because like they try to say it's the white man's book. Well, in no Webster, more than out. It's not an adjective.
In the white man's book.
In the white man's book.
So
yeah, he said that they're calling that. He just lied.
He lied on the Europeans. Calling the European out of his name. Lying on the European. That's why the European doesn't respect black people, because they're liars. That's why. European, Webster's dictionary is European. European said more is a noun, and this guy is telling you that more
That the same people, the same Europeans who said more was a noun, he's saying that they said it was an adjective. They didn't say that.
we got the European right here, the Webster. Letting you know. Right, but it's a slick thing because earlier, if you go right here, we'll see it says video unavailable. Video unavailable. This video has been removed by the user. What video? What do you mean? Why would he remove video? Oh, the video of him and his girlfriend with her fat ass. That put up a video this morning. Him and his girl were on there together, dissing a Moor who subscribed to their channel but didn't have any views or any videos uploaded. It was brother Yaqub. If brother Yaqub's in the chat or if you're in the comment, right, you have the Great Seal as your picture. You just make yourself known or whatever to who you are. Either leave a comment on the video and verify that you subscribe to them today. Verify that you subscribe to them. And that when you subscribe to them, I'm letting you know they made a video talking about why is this guy subscribing to him, and they're laughing while they're eating food or eating breakfast or whatever. Then all of a sudden, video is gone. And then they upload this BS talking about comprehension. And then use Sheldon L's comment. Another Moor. Remember, there's a campaign against the Moors. This is Inquisition going on right now. Don't forget. There's Inquisition right now. Live and direct. This is Inquisition.
Yep. These are the Estebans. The Esteban the Moor who came over and helped Cortez. That's who these people are. These are the sellout conquistadors.
Yep.
It's the same thing.
These are the ones.
The same 10,000 Moors that were here that sided with Cortez against Montezuma. Same ones. 10,000 Moors here on this in Morocco sided with Cortez to go against Montezuma. That's the descendants. These are the descendants of those people.
These are the descendants of them. Straight. The sellouts. The sellout is real. The sellout is so real. And then keep in mind, we're just going to verify, right? Because you see, August 14th, uploaded today. Right? Uploaded today. Dope production, Turtle Gang. Keep them coming. Mizak. Whatever, Mizak. These guys are whack. They're liars. Lying on the European. Lying on Moors. Moors subscribing to them, which the point of YouTube is have subscribers, and then you're mad that the Moors subscribing to you. Are you mad? And then, 1 hour ago, Brother Sheldon L. leaving a comment. He took screenshot of that, and now he's making a videos. People talking about good production. It's not good production. It's propaganda.
I am going to address all comments made in reference to this video.
We're not commenting. We're watching you right now. Forget commenting on your
Please,
video.
I'm going to say this one more time. Comprehension is the key. Don't take shit out of context.
Let's just see if this is out of context right here. It's official. Early scholars described America's indigenous people as Moorish. Warlock Asylum. How come you didn't make a video debating him? How come you're not debunking Warlock Asylum stuff on warlockasyluminternationalnews.com, uploaded since 2017. It's 2019 now, but here you go, talking BS. Right? Okay, well, let's see what he has to say. The Indian races of North and South America. The Indian races. The Indian races of North and South America by Charles D. Wolfe Brownell makes this observation. Some theorists have indefatigably followed up the idea that we are to search for the lost tribes of Israel among the red men of America, and have found or fancied resembles otherwise accountable between Indian and Hebrew words, ceremonies, and superstitions. Others have exhibited equal ingenuity in carrying out a comparison between the Moors of Africa and the Americas, claiming to establish a near affinity in character and complexion between the two races. They suppose the Moorish immigrants to have arrived in the West India Islands or the eastern coast of South America, and thence to have spread over the continent. According to Bromwell, whose writings were published decades before the inception of the Moorish Science Temple of America and the birth of Noble Drew Ali, it was an opinion of early scholars that the Moors were the first to populate the Americas, and such comparisons were largely due to a near affinity in character and complexion between the two races. Amazingly, early scholars agree that the Carib native tribes most certainly originated from Africa. Published in 1855, Ethnological Philological Essays by James Kennedy. You just go read that one on your own time. But we're gonna get to something very interesting. The Karankawa Indians, the coast people of Texas, writes, the term Moorish, as here applied, can scarcely be regarded as a deceptive one in as much as Montezuma, the king of Temestan and Mexico, is subsequently designated as a Moorish king in the same inventory of 1596. That doesn't sound like they mean description. It is interesting to note the gradual changes that occur in the wording of the subsequent periodical official registrations of this Moorish hat. In 1613, its description was faithfully reproduced. In 1621, the word Indian was substituted for Moorish. With this single alteration, the original text was again transcribed in 1730. The Journal of American Folklore, volumes 8 and 9, page 112 states, Mexican life is one of Moorish origin.
You gotta say that again, please.
The Journal of American Folklore, volumes 8 to 9, page 112, states, Mexican life is one of Moorish origin.
What else do you want?
I don't know what else they want. I don't know what else. I don't know what else.
I mean, and remember, Mexico went all the way over to Georgia.
Right.
So-called Georgia, all the way almost up to Canada, Canaanland.
So don't get it
Mexico
messed up.
Was massive, right?
Because that wasn't Mexican. That was Moorish.
Yep.
That wasn't, Borican. That was Moorish. Why do you think the port was rich? Puerto Rico. It's just a rich port just because. Why is the port rich? Matter of fact, whose port is this? Whose port is this that they named this place after this port that was rich? That's what they call the whole place. Not just the port only. The whole country is known as the rich port. The country was a port. The island was a port.
Yeah.
The continent was a port.
Yeah.
Mansa Musa had 1,000 ships or whatever they said. What do you mean 1,000 ships? You know how much 1,000 ships are? Where are those ships going when they come here? Like how long? Like think about this. He has 1,000 ships, right? Where are all these 1,000 ships docking? Are they docking?
Yeah, that's the best question in the world, man.
Are they docking going out into the ocean, or are they docking along the seaboard? And how far does this port go?
Right. Because we're not talking about canoes. Even 1,000 canoes is crazy. We talking about 1,000 ships.
Ships. And you already know them. The people of Mali were Moors. Malian Moors. Look it up. Play it.
1,000
What
ships.
would make you think I don't know what the etymological origins of the word is? Like all the research I do, all the productions I've made, why do you think I would miss something so basic? This is why I repeated myself in the production, because I wanted to reinforce that I am not speaking about the origins of the word. I am referencing how Europeans used it at that time. Yo, this shit is crazy. Like the shit is right before your eyes.
Even if we take what he just said, that disproves even the fact that you're going off of Eurocentric thinking.
Yeah, that too. Eurocentric
that means
thinking.
your whole thing is Eurocentric thinking. Every time you talk, you admit it. You're coming from a Eurocentric thinking platform. That's your foundation. Every time you talk, that's what you just said. If you were making it seem as if it was that, like how could you say that? I'm saying from what Europeans are. Oh, even worse. Even worse. Because their whole thing was rolling pontifex, them the verses. That's their whole way of telling the history. So if he's telling the history that way too, from a Eurocentric way, you already know whose side he's on.
You already know what side he's on. If you're not on the side of the Moors, that's the only side is the setup. Like that's all that's left. You're either from some other nation or you're a sellout. Because if you look like me, you're a Moor. I don't care what you want to play and talk about the light and dark and all that BS.
Eyes and you can't see it. Like, yo, I'm trying to tell you, slow down and think things through. People are running off at the mouth. You ain't gotta prove to me what the origins of the term Moor is. I know what it is. I study this shit. But I am telling you, the origin of the word for Europeans is not the hieroglyphics. The origin for Europeans is the Latin word Moor.
No, I thought it was Greeks who went to Egypt and go learn or whatever like that. Wasn't everybody as far as the Europeans, weren't they going to Kemet to go learn? From my understanding, that's where Europeans went to learn, right? In Kemet, right? Ancient Egypt, that's where they went. And then they fused in, and then they took over with Ptolemy and all that stuff, and then the Egyptians turned into light-skinned people. What we have today. So I'm kind of confused as to what do you mean by the hieroglyphics is not the origin of the European thinking. Because that's what the goddamn 10 Commandments come from the laws of Ma'at. What the hell are you talking about?
Right.
If the 10 Commandments come from the laws of Ma'at, yeah, boy, go ahead, boy.
Because he's killing himself. Because when you're saying that the Europeans went to Egypt to learn and all that, Wallace Budge is a European. W.E. Wallace Budge is a European. He's the one that cracked the code for the manuscripts. What's it called again? I forgot. The writings in Kemet.
Yeah. The hieroglyphs.
The hieroglyphics. Yeah, he's the one that cracked the code to the hieroglyphs. That's a European. Wouldn't that mean that that's their way of thinking? He's the one that broke down the hieroglyphs, the European. He's the one that cracked the code. He's the one that says the owl and such meant more than a high priest. He's the one. The Europeans thought that, but we all know that they got their teachings and learnings from Moors. He didn't just go in there and crack that code. That's not happening. But in his book, he's the one that got it published. It wasn't no, no Moore wrote it down and got it published. We got that from W.E. Wallace Budge. Mm-hmm. That's the European writing it down. Like, cause he killing himself, man. He kills. Like, his argument is like he's just mad.
He's mad. This is a mad video.
Yeah, this
is a mad video. All that studying that you did. Yep, all that studying he did. He bumped into so much more stuff, whatever. He's just mad. Mad for no reason. Just accept that we're Moors. Ain't no big deal.
Right.
You tripping.
Because if you know, like he keeps claiming, oh, you think I didn't study this shit? Like he keeps saying, you think I don't know? Yeah. So why are you telling? If you know, why don't you just tell it that way?
Right.
Why are you telling it the other way? If you know, like you keep saying, you know, so tell it that way. Tell it the correct way. Why are you telling it the BS way? Why are you doing it that way? Why? Because once you tell it the right way, all that Indian crap is out the window.
It's out the window because Mexico is Moorish. So if Mexico is Moorish and that's its origin, why would the Europeans' origin be something else other than Moorish? Like what other origin do they have? Because remember, Egypt's North Africa. So what are you talking about? Everybody knows North Africa is where the Moors were from. Egypt's in North Africa, according to my knowledge.
Obviously, there is an older version, but the Europeans were not privy to that because they weren't around at that period in time. So they only get it from where they get it from. Hence, we get it from them. Because most of us were speaking English before we learned hieroglyphics. So before you learned hieroglyphics, you learned the term Moor from Europeans. And how they used it is not in its etymological origin. They used it according to how the Latin language used it. Because all those languages...
Good work.
Well, the Latin, that's the Moors. Moors invented Latin. So the European got that from Latin, that came from the Moors.
So that would mean that it's not really European stuff then.
Right, that's not Spain, that's Island and Loose. They weren't speaking Spanish.
These dudes are tripping.
Is that the Europeans spoke are Latin based. You're missing basic fundamentals. That's why I say comprehension. Slow down, think the shit through. Peace.
In honor of our good brother, we'll just
Canaanland Moors presents Common Sense Quickies. What we do here is we add some
whoa. What was that? What was that? Is that real? Not that real. No way it's that real. Can't be that real. No way.
The problem is that many of our, first off, let's start with our Superman, our Kal-El, our PhD in Moorish history scholar, Dr. Ben, and hear what he says.
Moors.
Dr. Ben said we were calling ourselves Moors, M-A-U-E-R-S, then M-O-O-R-S. Many people are familiar with M-O-O-R, but not M-A-U-R. If we go to the Hieroglyphics Dictionary by E.A. Wallace Budge, we find that the word Moor, M-A-U-R, is in the book. The meaning is stated as Palermo Stele, the title of the high priest of Anu. So first off, Moor, M-A-U-R, was on the walls of ancient Hikupta, aka ancient Kemet/ancient Egypt. Second, if we do some research, we find out that Palermo Stele actually means Palermo stone. So that's on academia.edu for more information as well. So now, let's use some common sense. If we look back into history, the word Moor, M-A-U-R, pops up in Mauritania, Mauryan Empire, and Societas Republicae y Almorecanos Estados. The Mauryan Empire, under Chandragupta, is listed from about 321 BCE to 185 BCE. This is from the Encyclopedia Britannica website. This is from the ancient.eu website. This is from the Wikipedia website. Then there is the Societas Republicae y Almorecanos Estados, which is Latin for the United Association of the Republic of Almorecanos, or the United Republic States of Almorecanos. This is the title of the North American government before the arrival of the Europeans. Next up, all of northern Alkebulan, aka Africa, was known as Mauritania at one point, and this was since 300 BCE. This is from the Wikipedia website. Let's read some of what is said about Mauritania. Mauritania is the Latin name for an area in the ancient Maghreb Tamazgha. It stretched from central present-day Algeria westward to the Atlantic, covering northern Morocco and southward to the Atlas Mountains. Its native inhabitants, semi-nomadic pastoralists of Berber ancestral stock, were known to the Romans as the Mori and the Masazili. Now let's scroll down a bit and see what it says about the Mori people. Mauritania existed as a tribal kingdom of the Berber Mori people. Mori is recorded as the native name by Strabo in the early 1st century. This appellation was also adopted into Latin, whereas the Greek name for the tribe was Moruzi. The Mori people would later bequeath their name to the Moors, M-O-O-R-S, on the Mediterranean coast of North Africa from at least the 3rd century BC. The Mediterranean coast of Mauritania had commercial harbors for trade with Carthage since the 4th century BC, but the interior was controlled by Berber tribes who had established themselves in the region by the beginning of the Iron Age. Well, this is interesting. Once again, the Mori people would later bequeath their name to the Moors, M-O-O-R-S, on the Mediterranean coast of North Africa from at least the 3rd century BC. What does bequeath mean? Bequeath, verb, leave property to a person or other beneficiary by a will. He bequeathed his art collection to the town, pass something on, or leave something to someone else. He ditched the unpopular policies bequeathed to him. Interesting. So that ties into what Dr. Ben was saying when he said,
we were calling ourselves Moors, M-A-U-E-R-S, then M-O-O-R-S.
Dr. Ben said we were calling ourselves Moors, M-A-U-E-R-S, then M-O-O-R-S. So common sense should tell us that the knowledge from the high priests of Anu at some point started to spread either through some of the priests leaving Hikupta, aka Egypt, and then spreading their wisdom, and or people coming to Egypt to gain this knowledge through the Egyptian mysteries system, and then going back to their respective areas and teaching others. Hence why all of North Al-Kebulan, aka Africa, Southwest Asia, and North America all bore the word Moor, M-A-U-R, in their titles. Only a few were privileged to learn the mysteries system. So once you quote-unquote graduated from your 40-year study of the mysteries system in Hikupta, aka Egypt, you became a high priest of Anu, aka a Moor, M-A-U-R. So to be clear, the knowledge of the Moors, M-A-U-R-S, at some point started to spread since BC times. And common sense should also tell us that if they all bore the same title, they must have been unified. And because the high priests of Anu, aka Moors, M-A-U-R, Moor, M-O-H-R, the M, Moor in German, French, Italian, and Spanish all go back to medieval Latin or Middle Latin Moris. So there you have it. When you say that Moor, M-O-O-R, means black, you are literally using the European definition as they understood it. That is what Morus, M-A-U-R-U-S, in Middle Latin meant to the European. However, Moor, M-A-U-R, in ancient Hikupta, aka ancient Egypt, was on the walls, and it went back to at least the first 5 Egyptian dynasties, 3100 BCE to 2325 BCE. Its meaning, the title of the high priest of Anu. And these high priests of Anu, Moors, M-A-U-R-S, later left their knowledge to their beneficiaries, Moors, M-O-O-R-S, when Hikupta, aka Egypt, began to fall, and the Moors, M-O-O-R-S, became the custodians of the ancient Egyptian knowledge. So, the meaning or etymology of Moor, M-O-O-R, is Moor, M-A-U-R, the title of the high priest of Anu. Oh, and side note, notice how Moor, M-A-U-R, appears on 3 different continents from since BC times? Chapter 47, anyone? Common sense was made before book sense.
Common sense was made before book sense. So there's that. Go back to
I'll call you right back.
all right, more
Islam.
Islam. So we'll take a listen now to the family that's been beating them up lately. They've been going in again. Islam to the Moors that study. Everybody's playing games right now.
I think they were never annexed.
It's been 22 entity, but there are still competing visions of what that government could look like, and hurdles to clear even after Native Hawaiians reach consensus. Could a renewed push for Native Hawaiian Constitutional Convention galvanize the community and pave the way for self-determination? Tonight on Insights, what would it take to achieve Hawaiian sovereignty? We encourage viewers to join tonight's conversation by calling 973-1000 if you live on Oahu, or 800-238-4847 if you're calling from a neighbor island. You can also watch Insights streamed live at pbshawaii.org. Just click on the Insights logo, or you can find us on Twitter at PBS Hawaii. Now to our panel. Peter Apo is trustee with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. He previously served 12 years in the State House of Representatives and was also former Governor Ben Kaitano's special assistant on Hawaiian affairs. Lili Kala Kamaelehiva is the director of the Kamakakuokalani Center for Hawaiian Studies at the University of Hawaii, Manoa. Dr. Kamaelehiva is a trained historian with expertise in Hawaiian cultural traditions and the Hawaiian sovereignty movement. Kalekoa Kaeo is an associate professor of Hawaiian studies at the University of Hawaii Maui College. A well-known sovereignty activist, Mr. Kaeo was recently arrested for protesting construction of the 30-meter telescope on Mauna Kea. And Bumpy Kanahele is the head of state for the nation of Hawaii, which is headquartered at Pu'uhonua o Waimanalo. In 1994, Mr. Kanahele was awarded the lease for the Waimanalo village after a 15-month occupation at Makapu'u Beach Park. Mr. Kanahele is also the CEO for Aloha First, a nonprofit organization working toward Native Hawaiian reconciliation and restitution. And let me start with Lilikala Kamaelehiva. What is sovereignty? Let's kind of do a little bit of a sort of sovereignty 101 here. People, don't understand or they have preconceived notions about these words. When we talk about sovereignty, what are we talking about?
A lot of people have different ideas about what that means, but for me it means political control over land. And that's the simplest way to put it. It's not a feeling in your heart. It's political control over land. At the moment, we Hawaiians don't have political control over land, and that's what we're seeking.
Bumpy Kanahele, you ended up with some control over some land. Is it as simple a definition as that, or is it more complicated to you?
I think the word is national sovereignty. And that is the identity of the people concerned and the control over the national lands.
So, same concept, right? Same concept, same thing we be telling our people. It's all about national something. Forget whatever else you've been doing. Some type of national something has to be going on. They're saying national sovereignty. They've taken the steps. Again, our flag's in the UN and all that stuff, so we don't really have to prove anything. This is for people who are making certain claims about they want freedom or whatever. If our people would take note of how the natives of Hawaii are reclaiming they'll automatically see that, hey, that's just like what the Moorish said. The land, they know that land is called whatever, just like we know over here it's called Morocco. They know that they're occupied over there. They know that people who aren't from there came over there and they have certain powers that they shouldn't have based on international law. And it's not just, quote unquote, some heads of whatever that think like this. This is everybody thinks like this.
It's very clear in the United Nations documents and stuff that national sovereignty exists in the Hawaiian people today. Always did.
Is there any, Mr. Kaeo, is there any dispute anymore that the Hawaiian Kingdom was illegally annexed by the United States?
I mean, I would even use the word illegally. I think they were never annexed at all. I mean, if you actually look at the facts of our history, it's very clear the United States tried formally in 2 attempts to annex the Hawaiian Islands, both in 1893 and later in 1897. And because of the organizing of our people with the coup petitions and the Queen's letter of protest, the U.S. Senate failed, again I repeat, failed to ratify that secondary treaty. So when you use the word illegal, see, that makes the idea that there was an actual annexation. And my challenge would be to anyone out there, show me any evidence of fact of having any annexation.
So in your mind, what does sovereignty mean now?
Sovereignty to me means, as in Hawaii we say, ko'oko'a manapia, which is having a full authority and control of your lives, your destiny, your land, your resources, your education, and really your future as a people. Sovereignty is something that, in fact, when we talk about sovereignty, I don't believe there's such a thing as a sovereignty movement. I think we need to understand that sovereignty was achieved in 1843 in the Hawaiian Kingdom when we became a recognized nation state. That's a historical fact. What has happened since, of course,
so again, so you can go back and you could see that red flag, green 5-point star that's recognized as the flag of Morocco. The kingdom, empire, whatever matters not. There's nation state recognition that there is this place called that flag, and there's this people that have sovereignty under this particular flag. Just like so-called Hawaiians, who we know they're from Mu, because Hawaii is mountain tops, just like the Caribbean islands are Atlantis mountain tops. And there was, however, it's not there anymore, I have no idea. But we know that there was masses of land where the islands are and where Hawaii and all that stuff is. And we know that these people aren't playing around like, you know, how certain people call their estate an island. You know, the Turtle Island, and that's something that if you're saying island, then you can't really say that the whole thing is an island. This is a continent. What are you claiming? They're claiming that they're a kingdom. They're taking the position of we are our own kingdom. We have our own flag, we have our own sovereignty because we're in our land. It's the exact same thing that Moors are saying. Nobody's calling them anti-government or sovereign citizen or whatever. They're actually backing their position that they're taking. People are actually standing up for
1843, specifically 1893 and 1898, 1900, was the taking away of our right to control our resources and control our lives. But that's really talking in the language of re-recognition or re-control of our sovereignty. That's not the same as saying we're trying to achieve something, because the fact is we already achieved it back in 1843.
And let me ask Peter up.
And again, going back to the thing that, you know, what we're doing is just that, making a reclamation of something that it's already been here. It's been under our feet the whole time. We never knew. The whole time it's been under our feet, and we never knew, because we were calling ourselves some other stuff that has nothing to do with anything. And we're looking around and we're seeing everybody else getting what it is that we're supposed to have been gotten based on what happened to us, and we can't get it. But these people aren't waiting around for somebody to give them something. They're making a reclamation.
Poe with OHA. Is there a difference between sovereignty and independence?
Yes.
How would you break?
Well, sovereignty does not necessarily include independence in this case. So when you look at those who champion federal recognition is getting, basically leads to the Indian model of a nation within a nation. Independence, in this case, means that that as Kaliko pointed out, that the nation was never, the sovereignty of the nation was never extinguished. That we don't recognize the jurisdiction of the United States. So they're two different things. But I think essentially, you know, in terms of fast forwarding from 1893, 117 years ago, something bad happened, and a whole population, you know, Hawaiians and others who were citizens, were disenfranchised illegally from their sovereignty and from their nationhood. And
that's the same thing. That our people thought that they came over here on a slave ship and that they were slaves and whatever like that, when they're actually the Aboriginal indigenous people. And again, like we said earlier, And then you could just go down the line of words. And the word indigenous was substituted for Moorish. The word Lenape was substituted for Moorish. The word Cherokee was substituted for Moorish. The word Seminole was substituted for Moorish. The word Aboriginal was substituted for Moorish. Anything having to do with the first people on this land called the Americas was substituted for Moorish. That's disenfranchisement. That's denationalization. And that could only be done by people who are part of that land. There has to be a sellout for the European to have that much power, to be able to say, we're going to misclassify people, not call them what they are. The exact thing that they're doing right now is where more should be at. Where they're at, they're using their birthright to fight against a telescope getting built. Yeah, we should be using our birthright to fight against whatever they're trying to do with us. Not march, picket, and play around like that's going to do something.
It's been 117, it's been 37 years since the OHA has been created, and that we've been trying to figure out a way to resolve this, to try to come up with a common vision of what we mean by sovereignty, as Kala pointed out earlier. And it's a very difficult navigation because, as she mentioned, within the Hawaiians, they all have a little different version of what we mean by sovereignty. But I will say this, until there is a resolution to this abiding tension that has existed for 117 years between Hawaiians and the rest of Hawaii, Hawaii will never be whole.
Yeah.
It's got to be resolved.
Lilikala Kama Elihua, so I understand. There's a difference between independence and sovereignty in your mind, yes? So where do you think is the model of federal recognition? How does that look?
You know, when I look at what our people need today, we need land, we need housing, we need to have a place where we can find shelter. If you look at the 520,000 or 25,000 Native Hawaiians, where 50% of us are somewhere else outside of Hawaii because we can't afford housing. We've got quite a number of our people who are homeless as well, or houseless as they say it. We need land now. And we need to have houses now. We need to have a place where we can grow.
Now, how come they want houses, not homes? How come their perspective is we're houseless, not homeless? They're houseless, not homeless? Moors haven't even dropped that one yet. Right? They are houseless and they want houses. They do not want homes. Right? They obviously know something. And again, that specificness with their language, that they're not talking, the only thing that I hear them talking, that's little whatever, they keep saying America instead of U.S. But other than that, they know exactly what they're talking about.
Grow food and feed our people. We need to run our own school system, absolutely, because the DOE does not serve the Hawaiian nation, or Hawaiian children, or Hawaiian identity. So when I look at all those things, I say, okay, how can we achieve that as quickly as possible? Because I'm a grandmother now, and I don't want to wait longer. And I think we have some really dire problems right now that we need to resolve. So I look at federal recognition as a way to come to control some land, have a government that is not a state agency. I think OHA works very hard to find ways to support the Hawaiian people.
Right? See, their federal recognition is not somebody else recognizing them from the federal jurisdiction. Their federal recognition is them recognizing themselves. Their federal recognition is them They can move whatever they're free up. So they could, move whatever.
Sometimes we disagree politically, but I think their hearts are true. The hearts are good. Our problem is it's a state agency and everybody gets to vote for OHA. We need to have a government where Hawaiians vote for those government officials and people are responsible to the communities that they come from, to the islands that they come from. And if the community says, we don't like what you do, they vote you out. That's old story, democracy. So when I look at federal recognition, which is not perfect, not for Native Americans, not for Alaska Natives, it's not perfect, I still see opportunity there that we might not have any other way. I don't think we're going to be independent tomorrow. And if we were, do we have young people who are going to run the nation, who are going to plant food, or take care of water, take care of medicine, take care of education? Do we have young people who can do that? Can we run our own nation? So federal recognition actually gives us a chance to practice all those things, and then we can talk about independence. But right now, we're outnumbered.
And that's the same thing that Noble Drew Ali set up the movement for, so that Moors could learn how to be their own government. And you have everybody has their position and their title, and then there's a body of representatives that the people have elected because they're members, so they're allowed to vote and all. And once you start exercising like that, once you have the land, then you're your own government. This is where they're at. They already have their recognition. UN's already backing them that what these people are doing with the telescope is wrong or whatever. You know, but what's the difference? You don't have a bunch of them saying, "Oh yeah, some of us are light skinned and some of us are black and some of us are brown and some of us are then." All of them know who they are. Whereas with us, only Moors know who they are.
By non-natives. So if we were independent tomorrow, that doesn't mean Hawaiians would get anything.
Right. Let me go to Kael. Is federal recognition enough for you in terms of...
Definitely not. I mean, I'm one of those very, very clear out there that federal recognition, to me, and assimilation is death to our people. And all you got to do is look at history. If you understand, if you put Hawaiians under federal Indian law, and there's some things about federal Indian law you got to understand, what we call the Marshall Trilogy. When you look at things with doctrine of discovery, being a dependent domestic nation, you be a trustee, a ward. These are words and language in which, under U.S. federal law, how American Indians are treated, I should say treated, mistreated, dehumanized, living in situations that are appalling. And yet, I find it very troubling that trustees and other leaders in my community somehow believe that's a step forward. For me, that's a step towards death as a people. Our kupuna left out with this message, Ea o Kaina. Womau ke ea. Ea o Kaina is not federal Indian policy. Ea o Kaina, again, with the land, the control. If we cannot have a situation which we can decide for ourselves, what happens at Mauna Kea? Let me ask that question. How would engaging in federal recognition stop what's going on in Mauna Kea? And I would suggest it wouldn't stop Mauna Kea, it wouldn't stop Naui, it wouldn't stop in regards to returning the waters to our streets.
Now, what are you talking about? Jurisdiction. Jurisdiction. By having the colonists, the foreigner, the whoever, acknowledge or give a positive perspective of, that gives them jurisdiction. So we're supposed to know for ourselves off the top where we stand. Right? Remember, they're coming from the perspective that, well, this more right here is from the perspective that forget assimilation. Why? Not because they don't agree with relations with other people, but they're in their own land. Why you have to assimilate in my own land? They're going hard.
Streams, these are situations which tell us directly, unless we bring life back to the land, we're really talking about the death of a people.
I would argue the exact opposite. I would say that if we had federal recognition, we could control Mauna Kea, we could control Haleakala, we could control our lands. And that is really a difference of opinion, of course, but I would argue that those kinds of things could be controlled by a nation that is recognized by the federal government.
Let me give you an example. How would it change education? Federal policies of no child left behind, that's a federal policy.
Yes, it is.
American Indians are forced to follow these policies. When they look to education, who do American Indians look to education? They look to the Hawaiians. See, but the point I want you to understand is that...
Absolutely, I want us to run our own...
Let me finish my point.
No, I'm going to ask both of you to... Okay, stop for a second.
All I'm saying is that let's look at factual situations. Let's look at facts. No Child Left Behind, Race to the Top. These are federal programs that are imposed upon our Hawaiian education right now that we're forced. We're forced. That's a federal program.
And it doesn't have to be in the federally recognized nation. They don't have to follow that.
Okay, which American Indians don't follow that law?
You absolutely don't have to follow it.
Which American Indians do not follow that law?
We don't want the money for that.
No, I'm asking a very straight question. Which American Indian tribes are not forced to follow those laws?
I don't think they're forced to follow
They're all forced.
Exactly. They're all forced. Right? And again, you know who is on the side of the political whatever, and then who's on the side of the people. The ones on the side of the people, it's not about the recognition from the foreigner or the foreigner batting the eye at us so now we feel like we're somebody. And the so-called conscious Negro, black, color, whatever you call yourself, this generation need to take some notes as to what is going on in the world, not just, because this is in the public. Right? Look, keep in mind, this PBS saying they want to hear these conversations. They want to hear these conversations because the thing's busting at the seams right now. Everybody's getting violated and everybody's talking up about it. And the only ones not talking up are the Negro, black, color people because they're too busy going to church and they're too busy buying Jordans and doing all other BS that they shouldn't even be doing. Because majority of the things that they're looking at is for selfish gain, not for the body of people. A little bit more of this, but there's another one.
So, let's get
We're
Peter.
forced to now that we're not federally recognized.
Okay, Peter.
This is one of the more complicated things to understand. Federal recognition in and of itself does not constitute sovereignty or nationhood.
Correct.
Federal recognition simply qualifies Hawaiians as it does Native American Indians and Native Alaskans. And by the way, we are not recognized as Native Americans.
Thank God.
To draft a proposal for sovereignty and for nationhood that then has to be ratified, I assume, by the state of Hawaii and by the federal government. So what that proposal would be is what the upcoming convention, we think, is intended to raise. OHA has a bifurcated mission, and sometimes it doesn't quite match up. The first responsibility we have is since over the 117 years, beginning with the Hawaiian Homestead Act, there's been a compilation of over 250 federal entitlements for Hawaiians that amount to millions and millions and millions of dollars, right? In the absence of federal recognition, all of that is at risk because we are not Native Americans. So that's why you get the rice.
They're not Native Americans because they know that that's a status created by the colonists to trap the so-called quote-unquote Indian tribes, the Six Nations. Right? They know that that is what that's used for. And they're saying we don't want any part of that because that constitutes federal recognition by saying Native American, quote unquote.
Cayetano, the lawsuits coming down. So we are, federal recognition helps protect those entitlements until such time that we can have some sort of a national proposal.
That's
I
not
want to
true.
give
That's not true.
Bumpy one a shot.
I gotta disagree with that, because if it was, we wouldn't be getting lawsuits every year. Trust getting lawsuits. Now, federal recognition not going to help those lawsuits. There's no guarantee.
That's true.
Now, I just like to get back to what we're talking about. The national sovereignty, this is where independence takes its reign over federal recognition.
Yeah, I wanted you to get into that a little bit, because you and I have had the conversation before about what you picture as how this works.
Well, national sovereignty, prior to 1778, we all had our national sovereignty. Each Kanaka had their identity as a Kanaka, and they had their rights to the lands and natural resources. Now, as soon as, after the Kamehameha, when he united all the Hawaiians, he was uniting the sovereignty, the national sovereignty of all of them. Now, after the second, the third comes in, the Mahele totally wipes out communal land tenure or national sovereignty, and then what ends up? The native tenant rights, subject to native tenant rights, it watered down. Now, once it watered down, it of course left avenues open for non-Hawaiians to come in, businesses and all that, to wipe that out.
You know what, Bumpy, you're wrong about federal recognition. In the absence of federal recognition, the Rice-Cayetano decision comes down that says Hawaiians are racist, that you cannot separate out Hawaiians. We cannot organize ourselves in the absence of federal recognition because we do not enjoy the same congressional protection that is afforded every other indigenous people in the United States. So federal recognition, first of all, would allow us to have an election without being threatened by lawsuits that it's a racist.
No, I
so while you may disagree with federal recognition as the pathway that you choose to exercise independence and quality of life for Hawaiians, it is very important in protection of the entitlements. We are living on a house of cards. The only thing that says that protects us in terms of being able to act is the Hawaiian Homestead Act. It's a very, very thin thread because we're not Native American Indians and we're not Native Alaskans.
Can I just wait for a second, because I want to make sure that I want to be real loyal to our audience here, in that you guys are kind of getting into the points that they're over my head, and I think that they're going to be going over our audiences. So we'll get to these things step by step.
Talk about the national sovereignty part, because I'm not an American. We're not Americans. If you are, then you're not independent. If you are a national, then you're forced to live under the rule we are. You're forced to use their money. You're forced to use their ID cards. You're forced to use their passports for travel. That's a given. That's where we're under extreme duress. But we're not Americans. If you're a national, you're not an American. Now, federal recognition ain't gonna rob me of my national sovereignty. In no way that's gonna happen.
Okay, so let me
now, and getting just real quick.
Okay.
Now, one of the staff members of OHA, I asked him that question, and he couldn't answer me that there would be no lawsuits. You mean to say that this gonna stop the lawsuits? And he couldn't answer. He couldn't answer me.
As I understand,
it's from you guys' office.
I didn't say it was going to stop the lawsuits.
No, but that's what I'm saying. So why are we throwing the dice? You know what I mean?
There is a shield that federal recognition provides us that would have prevented the Rice-Cayetano decision. The Rice-Cayetano decision that said we cannot have an election was based on the fact that we have no federal recognition.
Which is to say, because if you get the federal recognition, they're gonna play games. If you don't have the federal recognition, they're gonna play games. Which is what it comes down to, what he's saying, that it's all about us handling our own affairs. We don't need to get any permission from them to do whatever it is. We just do what it is we're supposed to be doing, as quote unquote the, original people here. Right? Now there's another one. But just to show that, they're arguing about black, white, orange and all that stuff. They're at the stage of set up their stuff. You know.
The Hawaiian subjects, Hawaiian nationals, they're fervent about what they want. There's no questioning that. But on the flip side, there's an old guy in Waimea told us, they just tie a little rope on his leg and tie it to the stick. And the smallest resistance will stop that elephant from trying. He can break it. It just takes one step like that. Mm-hmm. And for us, that's exactly how it is. And all you got to do is take the step, because that chain is just a rope. It's all in our minds, So
I didn't hesitate. It was, for me, a no-brainer. I said, yes, I'll be there. And the first day of the proceedings, literally, as I'm an attorney, and for 6 years early in my career, I was a district court judge. I have always been a history buff, a student of history, student of political science. But that first day at The Hague, the proceedings, literally took my breath away. I recognize that in over a century, the question of the Kingdom of Hawaii as a nation state in the family of nations was not at issue. And I was kind of like, wow, where are we? And what are the ramifications of these proceedings?
I can say that I have not had one instance in court where there's been any opposition to either the factual, the legal, or historical arguments that we made concerning the legal status of the Hawaiian Kingdom.
Hawaii's legal and political history today is much more complex. It's much more nuanced, in part because we have a much better understanding of what took place in the 19th century. And so a lot of that, right, a lot of just the basic daily conversations that we have, whether it be on the streets or whether it be with family, the way that we talk about Hawaii has changed.
A legitimate legislative assembly to review all the laws, etc. How do we operate in the meantime?
Right. No, I got your point. My name is Dr. Keanu Sai. I have a PhD in political science. I am currently the Minister of the Interior in an acting capacity, as well as Chairman of the Hawaiian Council of Regency. Well, when I graduated from the Kamehameha schools in 1982, I went on to a military college, New Mexico Military Institute. I was there for 2 years. It's like a mini West Point, 24/7 military, junior college. I was able to get my commission as a second lieutenant in the Army Reserve, as well as an associate's degree in pre-business. I spent 10 years in the military, both active and reserve, out of the 1st of the 487th Field Artillery. And my last command, before I was honorably discharged in 1994, was Charlie Battery Commander. It was a great opportunity serving in the U.S. military. It came to a point, though, that I needed to move on. And I began to realize that Hawaii was occupied, and I needed to address that. I would have never thought that my military training would be so foundational for me to address that situation, but it has.
After Keanu had gotten back from being in the military, he was going to school at UH. I was a new mom. My brother was working construction. And we would hang out and we'd talk about stories. We'd talk about history. We'd start reading things. We'd start digging. The guys started a kind of research group of digging through different things, and they were studying the history of Kaulana-Napua. And I mean, it's just kind of one thing led to another. Mostly it was our curiosity about our history, about where we come from, who we are. And then finding the genealogy of our collective great-grandmother was kind of an important step for us. because we read about her. Our tutu was Lucy Kapohayali Kamamalu. Her in 1896. The Mo'oku Auhau Ali'i were printed in the Hawaiian language newspapers by law.
So I look at this genealogy, which was published in the Kamakai Nana newspaper in 1896. It starts in the 1400s under Liloa, King Liloa. And it goes all the way from Liloa to my tutu's father, my tutu's uncle, and my tutu's auntie. And then I found my dad's genealogy in the same newspaper. And I found that throughout the year of 1896, the Kamakai Nana newspaper was printing these articles on genealogy. And it was titled Mo'oku Auhawali'i, which is genealogy of nobility. And I was shocked. I was like, nobility? And I quickly began to remember my tutu's stories about Prince Kuhio, about how she was treated. She would have to eat first. I mean, all these stories started to come out.
January 14th, when Lili'u went to prorogue the legislature, in Curtis E. Okea's memoirs, he writes about our tutu Lucy going with her across to Oli'olani Hale and getting out of the carriage, and she went in front of Lili'u and was her chanter and chanted her up the steps of the Oli'olani Hale before she prorogued the legislature, before she prorogued them to introduce her new constitution. So, I mean, that it was hitting, that touched us. And then we started to study the history of what that meant, what, the whole event was about. And it just kind of, it just kept going. And we just kept reading and studying and searching.
But when we began to realize just who our families were, we had to take steps to continue where they left off, and that was our kuleana. So we're not only cousins and family, but we knew that we're about to embark on something that's really big. And each of us, we needed to cover each other's back. And if there's anyone that I could trust, would be my two cousins.
Council of Regency was started according to Article 33 of the Constitution of 1864, in similar fashion to the Belgian Council of Regency, which was established when Belgium was in exile. The Hawaiian Council of Regency was established the same way under our laws. The tricky thing here is you can study our laws, you can study the legislative record, you can study the House of Noble.
So this is them getting back into their position of handling their own affairs. Man's a minister of the interior, sisters whatever title that is, but it's not 50 different groups of people saying everybody backs this one individual as that man. Everybody backs her as whatever. There's not another group of them saying, oh yeah, we're the original of the, because they know there's one kingdom. Zero. They know that it's one kingdom. They're not out here 50 different whatevers.
Reports. You can study a lot of things about our country, but nowhere did anyone ever come up with a plan for if they steal our country, this is how you get it back. There is no master plan.
Right? The thing what Charlie said. Brought the flag back, brought everything back that you need because you are a nation. You are a nation, Morris. And we already know. That's why we got to start getting the word out to the people so that they know. And they can line themselves up properly with where they're supposed to be. So it's up to us to get this word out. Because you already see how the Indians are going to do. How the black tribe, whatever guys are going to do. They're going to do everything in their power to make the people not know that they're Moors. and do everything to make us being Moors seem like some type of fiction. And again, Islam to the Moors that study. Islam to the studious Moors. The lost civilization of Lemuria, Frank Joseph. The Mu knew their motherland by several names. Hawaii, now pronounced Hawaii, was only one of them. The island's most ancient and important oral tradition is the Kumulipo. Rere, the goddess of sunshine, came from heaven to earth to the mother of the Mu, the first humans. Through Kumu Hanua, the lineage of every great chief and high priest was traced back to the supreme god. Tetu Munui, the great builder or master teacher who made the world. A Hawaiian priest of the Kahuna mystery cult wears headgear resembling that worn by the yellow hat adherents of the Tibetan Buddhism. Another connection with Rapa Nui is an early name the Mu gave to Hawaii, Kahuapo Okane, or the navel of Cain. Cain was the god of light reminiscent of Tepito Tekura, the navel of light Easter Island, most holy artifact brought personally by Hato Matu from his sunken homeland, Marerenga. Just do a little research. Little research. Not much needed. Just a bit. Just a bit. But once you start researching and putting these things together, you realize that, damn, what the Moor's been saying is actually what's up. That is what's up.
So, driven by our determination and our dedication to right the wrong of our ancestors. I mean, really, basically, that's what it comes down to, you know. And for once and for all, to address the injustices against our country, our queen, and our kingdom.
We had a strategic plan back then. Now, mind you, this was back in 1996. Basically 3 phases. And this is where my military comes out. You don't engage anything without a plan, right? So phase 1, verification of the Hawaiian Kingdom as an independent state. We needed an outside entity to verify Hawaii's existence, not we saying it exists. We needed verification from outside. Once we get verification, it moves to phase 2, exposure of Hawaiian statehood within the framework of international law and the law of occupation as it affects the realm of politics and economics at both the international and domestic level. And then it would naturally move to phase 3, restoration of the Hawaiian Kingdom, as an independent state and subject of international law, where the occupation will eventually come to an end. So when the Council of Regency comes to the forefront, they become targets. I've always been a target from day one. A lot of people thought it was just me, the army of one. There are many people behind me that I actually sought to protect. Right now, the Council of Regency is coming out front and center. It has to. It has a duty and obligation to address the violations. And that is where we are right now. So that's how I came to realizing Hawaii's occupied. I didn't learn it from a professor. I didn't learn it from taking a class. I learned it from my experience at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, going through Officers Advanced Course as a captain during the first Gulf War and receiving real life intel coming in. It was only until 1992 when I started to look up my genealogy, because my tutu asked me, I need to know my genealogy, because then she said I would know who I am and what I need to do, is when I started to uncover these things. And that's when I started to realize, wow, the parallels from what happened with Iraq and Kuwait to Hawaii and the United States was undeniable. An independent state has what is called a government. Those two are not synonymous. A country is separate from its government, and a government is separate from its country. Because during international relations between countries, governments get overthrown when they're at war. International law regulates war. That's why it's regulated by the Hague and Geneva Conventions and what is called international humanitarian law. But the overthrow of the Kuwaiti government back in 1990 did not mean the Kuwait country ceased to exist. It still existed, and we knew that. We called that occupation. And that Iraq was supposed to have been administering Kuwaiti law until they get a treaty of peace. Annexation of Kuwait did not terminate Iraq's liability or responsibility. Well, that same situation happened to Hawaii. So Hawaii's sovereignty was recognized in 1843, November 28. International law discerns between a country and a government because within international law, they have wars. And the objective of a war.
That's why the whole concept of be an NGO and whatever is, it's faulty. Because there's a difference between country and the government. If nobody already said we're Moroccans, that's tying us to a country. These are Moorish Americans, descendants of Moroccans. He's tying Moorish Americans to a country, not just, right? This is why we're being taught how to run the government, because we're actually the country. The country has to run its own stuff, right? But it's real interesting. So you can take some more of that in. The Acting Hawaiian Council of Regency. And then also too, remember that because we sent him an email with regard to this thing about keep talking about American occupation. It's not American occupation. It's U.S. occupation. And we let them know the definition of American, which is the copper-colored people that were here before Europeans occupied here. So we'll see if there's a response. But once again, give thanks to all the Moors. Brother Yusuf had some stuff to do with. Oh yeah, could actually deal with this one too. There were some questions. Just trying to find them. Gotta find the damn email now. All right, so are the nationalization processes in Canaanland similar to the states, different political structure? So we do the exact same thing. Study, 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 show yourself approved, and proclaim your nationality. The process is to put these people on notice, some way, shape, or form. We would say with your name correction and Judicial proclamation, as far as the paper, and as far as card, nationality card. And then the process is just to be yourself after that. Because processes or the idea of processes is getting people messed up out here, because everybody thinks something's a process, and then somebody mentions process to them and says 2,500 and they go get it, and then stuff's all messed up, papers all messed up, fake seals, people calling themselves notary public, giving themselves expiration dates and stuff like that, when that paperwork now is just void now, that you just bought for 2,500 or how much ever you paid for it. Because it's a fraud to let nationalization be a process. Like it's not a process like that. It's more abstract process. It's more a mind process than going to get some papers or whatever. Are there any connections to the UN or international agencies? If Moors have any connection to those, it's because they enforce the same stuff that Noble Drew Ali been telling us since 1913. Before there was a UN, he was talking UN declarations that you have a right to a nationality. He's already told us that we have a right to a nationality. So we are, connected. Are we using those connections? Probably not, because Moors haven't even dealt with the state people yet. You have to go through, you have to have some type of, dealing with every level of the fraud before you can go international and them have some conversation with you. So, for example, we use with the Hawaiians. They have an issue that's happening right now that it's known what's going on. The secret is to keep the Moors of America dumb, so there's no attention needed for over here. The attention is going to come when people start waking up and making these connections, like making the connections. Has anyone successfully acquired land or attempted to, so that the small communities of Moors can be established, food can be grown, etc.? Well, what all the other nations do, which again goes back to culture that we don't have, that's why our situation is so messed up. Other nations will say, all 10 of us are going to go live in this one house. Once we pay off this one house, then we're going to go buy another one, and then we'll pay that one off, and then that's how they have communities. That's what the Sikhs did out here. That's what the Chinese did out here. That's what the Turks and the whoever else did out here. Why they have Turk Town and Chinese area and Chinatown and whatever. They came in and they bought stuff in a certain area. There was no argument about why here and we don't want this one and whatever. You know what I mean? Why do I have to sleep on the floor and all that stuff? There was no argument. But look at us. We're about, you get the hell out at 16 or 17. You will be a man. You will be a whatever. Well, all these people all of them living in one house. All of them have a job paying them 50 grand a year or whatever. But all of them live in one house though. They'll pay that house off tomorrow and buy 5 more. Right? Because common sense was made before book sense. And our people don't even have book sense. So, so common sense, you don't even start talking about anything like that. Right? And it ain't about successfully acquired land. Brother Yusuf got bigger garden and he just has a backyard or whatever. So it's not something that can't be done or whatever with what you have. Again, the mindset is, because again, we're looking at it late. So all the stuff that we know, we should be teaching to the younger generation so that they can start prepping the mindset now. So by the time they get to the age of have a house and have a whatever like that, they got, 50,000 of them that are on the same mindset that, okay, we're going to buy that one and 10 of us are going to live in that one. And then 10 of us live in that one and 10 of us live in that one. We just take the whole row in 5 years and have our quote unquote community if that's what we really want. Because the whole idea of small communities of Moors being established or whatever is exactly what the temples was for us to have somewhere to be, and they're together. Why Noble Jolly said, make sure you travel in 3, 5, 7, whatever, because it'll show it together. Make sure you always talk about group of Moors and talked about Moors and always talked about from a plural perspective, never from an individual perspective, because the whole concept is the small community is when we realize that we're Moors and we stop playing like we're all these different things. Because if we say, like, if we look at it like unconscious Moors here don't build with the GS, but Moors, there's more near Bermuda right now is at my house. These guys going on a plane tomorrow, but he's here. But then he's not here. Totally different jurisdiction than here. But the Negroes that are here, that have temple right over there, they could go to or whatever, they don't want it. But you got Moors all over the place. They're going to go travel, 5 hours, 8 hours, get on planes or whatever like that, just so that they could have a connection to quote unquote the Moorish community here. Because majority of Moors know that in their community it's probably just them. So the establishing of some community is going to be based in Moors realizing, or unconscious Moors realizing that they're Moors. Then there's the community. It only seems weird because it's only us saying that we're Moors, but there's Moors everywhere. Like Moors are, you know what I mean? On what the neighbor that way, they're Moors. Neighbor that way, there's Moors. Neighbor across is some Asian Moors. On the other side of the hall, I think it's only Asiatics on that side, right? You know what I mean? So there's Moors everywhere. It's just they don't know that we're Moors, which is what the problem is, right? Thoughts on aquaponics, vertical farming, rainwater harvesting, general survival in true honor of the way our ancestors lived, tiny homes, earthships, etc. Anything and everything is possible once you have finance to do what you're supposed to do. Because, you know what I mean? We want to build homes out of tires. You're going to need some way to get the tires from wherever they're at to where you're building. Even if the tires are free. Finance has to come into play, always. Papers were witnessed and sealed by way of the MAC. I don't know what that is. Oh, Moorish American Consulate. I've been informed that since one of my witnesses may have been Albion heritage, my docs are ineffective. Pretty much, because you should have your own people witnessing your proclamation. But on the other hand of it too, why would a consular court be giving you papers when they're supposed to be dealing with disputes or whatever? Which again is another fiction, right? Because I know a lot of people chase that stuff because they've seen certain people's face on it. Well, lo and behold, Taharqa Bey is going to be lecturing in Philly. And guess who brought him there? Moorish Consular Court. But that's the same people who are against, okay. Not just Moorish Consular Court. House of Ram, Brother Abdullah Bey, they're backing a lecture by a guy who talked BS about them. Tell me weird stuff isn't going on. Tell me weird stuff isn't going on. Weird stuff is going on. So Moorish American consulate, whatever, I would say that you're already ineffective just from dealing with them. You're ineffective. Forget the witnesses, right? And then the second witness is a minor, so yes, ineffective. You are who you say you are, but again, there's no putting on the public on filing for any municipality or filing on some record of whatever. You're gonna get your paperwork. You're gonna make copies of your paperwork. You're gonna send out your paperwork because it's your paperwork. You got to put them on notice. You have to put them on notice. Yeah, you can post it on Facebook and you can post it on whatever. But again, if those papers came from a consular court, then it's useless. Because why would a court give you proclamation papers? It's not the purpose of a court. Where are we invoking the UN drip? The UN drip is not anything that we have to invoke. UN drip is something that's showing, proving the existing rights that indigenous people already have. Are the indigenous people going to act on those recognized rights? So Noble Drew Ali brought it to us with, everyone has a right to a nationality, and then UN, all their documents or whatever say nationality on there. So we know that Drew Ali was onto something, especially since he came before UN. So if he came before UN and now there's a UN and they're talking how Noble Drew Ali was talking in the 1920s, then they're pretty much backing what he's saying, right? Do Moors in your area enforce right to travel, have corporate tags, etc.? Well, if they have corporate tags and licenses and whatever, they more than likely have all their rights reserved, and they just don't want the headache of dealing with these highwaymen out here who destroy people's property because they're not bonded. So they would have corporate tags or whatever, reserve their rights, and just keep it moving. Other Moors, they might have corporate tags, but those tags might be expired or whatever. They might have a license that's expired, and they're just out there exercising their right to travel. And if these people get stopped, then they're given their right to travel info, and whatever happens, happens at that point. But even doing that, they would have already did their little rituals, and they would have their crystals, and they would have their mindset, and they would have certain things already in place before they start going out there pretending like they have some right to travel. Because just like Hawaii, there's occupation that's going on. So because there's occupation happening, you probably want to be, smart with how you maneuver. Because when these people kidnap people, they really kidnap them, and they might disappear. And you're useless, disappeared. Especially if you have info. So that was it. If those didn't get answered, you already know. Just send an email for more clarification. And don't forget, you can also go to Moorishness.com. Get the new Rock Halal album, Moorishness.com. And again, peace and love to all the Moors, wherever you're at. Islam to all the Moors worldwide. Islam to the Moor. Sheldon L for making it big time. Got the indigenous guy. Got the indigenous guy to make a video about you, boy. You're big right now. You got their eye on you. You better watch out there. You go and commented on these more stuff. They hunt you down. Peace and love to all the Moors. Islam to all the nobles. Islam to all the mothers. And I'll say Islam for Brother Yusuf. He wanted to be here, but he had to go deal with something. So you already know. Peace and love. And Islam to Brother Frankie Bay and all the fam. wherever they're at, for making the trip out here, and all the Moors worldwide, and also the chat Moors. I see y'all had a good one going on today. Peace and love to all the Moors. 3:30, time to go get something to eat. Peace and love, Moors.